Johnny Depp just turned 62. That's right, 62. Hard to wrap your head around, isn't it? For so many of us, Johnny isn't just an actor. He's a symbol of cool, of mystery, of rebellion. He's the quirky outsider who somehow became one of the biggest movie stars in the world. And yet, here we are, looking at Johnny Depp in his 60s, and the reaction from fans everywhere has been the same. Shock, surprise, and, let's be honest, admiration. Because no matter how much time has passed, Johnny still has that same presence that made him unforgettable decades ago. Think about it. Johnny's career has spanned over 40 years. That's 4 decades of unforgettable characters, wild transformations, and moments that defined pop culture. From Edward Scissorhands to Captain Jack Sparrow, from Gilbert Grape to Willy Wonka, he's been the guy who could disappear into a role so completely that you forgot you were watching Johnny Depp. But beyond the screen, his personal life has played out like something straight out of a movie too, complete with love stories, controversies, court battles, and constant media attention. And now at 62, people are asking the same question. How is he doing? What does he look like? And what's next for him? Fans who saw him recently were stunned. In Europe, during his tour with the Hollywood Vampires, Johnny appeared on stage with his guitar, and it was like time hadn't touched him. Sure, he's older, of course he is, but instead of looking tired or worn down, he looked refreshed. The same layered scarves, the quirky hats, the jewelry that's become almost like his signature armor. It was all there. His face showed a man who had lived, yes, but his eyes still sparkled with that same energy people first noticed in the late 80s. When he smiled, it was the smile of someone who knew who he was, who had made peace with his journey, and who wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone anymore. That confidence is striking because, let's not forget, this is a man who's been through battles most of us couldn't imagine. There was a time not long ago when people were wondering if Johnny's career was completely over. The tabloids were brutal. Rumors spread like wildfire. Every move he made was dissected, and the whole world tuned in during the court cases that put his private life on full display. It wasn't just gossip. It became a global event. And through it all, Johnny kept showing up. He walked into those courtrooms with his head high. He let the process unfold. And when the verdicts came, when the truth was finally heard, fans felt like they had been vindicated too. They had stood by him, defended him, and now they were proven right to do so. That kind of loyalty between a star and his fans doesn't come along often. So here we are. Johnny Depp is 62, and instead of fading away, he's redefining what it looks like to be a star in your 60s. He's not chasing big franchises the way he used to. Instead, he's picking projects that feel personal. Take Jean Du. Barry, for example, a French film where he plays King Louis XIV. It's not your typical Johnny Depp role. It's not a pirate or a quirky fantasy character. It's a dramatic, regal role, and when the film premiered at Cannes, the reaction was incredible. Imagine the moment. Johnny Depp, after years of being doubted, walking onto the red carpet, and the entire audience giving him a standing ovation. People were cheering, clapping, celebrating him, not just as an actor, but as a survivor. It was a comeback, yes, but more than that. It was a reminder that true talent doesn't disappear. And let's not forget Dior. While studios and executives hesitated, Dior never wavered. They stuck by him when others didn't, and it paid off because his fragrance campaign became one of the most successful in the company's history. That's rare in Hollywood. Brands usually run at the first sign of controversy, but Dior doubled down, and Johnny rewarded them by becoming the face of one of the most iconic campaigns ever. That alone showed the world that his star power hadn't dimmed. In fact, it had grown stronger. But if you really want to know where Johnny's heart is, look at his music. Long before he became a household name in film, music was his first love. And now, in his 60s, he's going back to that passion. Touring with the Hollywood Vampires isn't some celebrity side hustle. It's where he feels free. On stage, guitar in hand, you can see a man who is still living his dream. Fans say his performances are raw, filled with emotion, like every Note carries the weight of his experiences, and when you watch him up there, you realize something. Johnny Depp isn't slowing down. He's just channeling his energy into the things that make him happiest. But it's not all lights and cameras anymore. Behind the scenes, Johnny has embraced a quieter, more creative lifestyle. He spends much of his time in Europe, away from the chaos of Hollywood. He paints, he writes, he creates. Those close to him say this is what keeps him grounded. It's not about chasing fame anymore. It's about doing what feels true to him. And honestly, you can see the difference. His face looks healthier, his energy feels lighter. It's as if stepping away from the constant Hollywood grind allowed him to finally breathe. And that's probably why people are so shocked when they see him today. At 62, he doesn't look like someone clinging to the past. He looks like someone who's finally comfortable in his own skin. There's a calmness in the way he carries himself, a sense of peace. It's not about proving. He's still a superstar. He doesn't need to prove that. It's about showing that life after 60 can be vibrant, creative, and full of purpose. Industry experts have pointed out that Johnny's approach could be a model for other stars. Instead of burning out, instead of desperately holding on to blockbusters, he's chosen to work at his own pace. Smaller projects, music tours, art. All of it feeds into the same creative spirit that made him a star in the first place. And fans love it. They're not demanding another Pirates movie. Although, let's be honest, they wouldn't complain if it happened. They're just happy to see Johnny thriving again in whatever form that takes. Of course, the question of Jack Sparrow still lingers. Will we ever see him return to the role that defined an era of cinema? Disney has been careful with its words, sometimes hinting at possibilities, sometimes shutting down rumors. But for many fans, Johnny will always be Captain Jack, whether or not he puts on the costume again. That's the thing about iconic roles. They never really leave. They become part of who you are. And for Johnny, Jack Sparrow is as much a part of him as his music or his art. But Johnny himself once said something that feels important here. He said, "I've never been interested in being the biggest star. I've always wanted to tell stories that matter." Those words carry a weight that makes sense now more than ever. Back then, when he first said it, it sounded like a rebellious actor pushing back against the Hollywood machine. But at 62, looking at the way he lives today, you can see he meant it. He's finally living that philosophy in the truest sense. He's not chasing billion-dollar franchises anymore. He's not forcing himself into roles that feel more like corporate products than stories. He's telling the kinds of stories that matter to him, stories that resonate with his soul. He's creating art, whether that's on a film set, a canvas, or a music stage, that speaks to something deeper. And maybe for the first time in decades, he's sharing that art with the world entirely on his own terms. Think about what that means. Hollywood has always been about bigger, louder, flashier. Actors are often measured by the box office numbers, the size of their franchises, the awards they collect, the headlines they generate. But Johnny never really played that game. Even at the height of his fame, when studios would have lined up to hand him any script he wanted, he often turned to the weird, the unusual, the risky. While most actors wanted to be superheroes or action stars, Johnny wanted to be Edward Scissorhands, an outcast with scissors for hands and a heart of gold. He wanted to be Ichabod Crane, a nervous detective in Sleepy Hollow. He wanted to be Willy Wonka, a candy maker with a strange, unsettling charm. He wanted to be characters that didn't fit into neat boxes, and that's why he stood out. Now, decades later, he's still that same man, but wiser. At 62, he has nothing left to prove. He doesn't need another billion-dollar franchise to validate his place in history. He's already done that. Pirates of the Caribbean alone changed pop culture forever. Jack Sparrow is a character. The kids, parents, and grandparents all know, even if they've never watched the movies from start to finish. That kind of cultural impact is rare, and yet, instead of chasing another Jack Sparrow-level role, Johnny is walking a different path, a quieter, more personal path, one that reflects who he is now, not who Hollywood wants him to be. And that's why something like Jean du Barry feels so significant. Playing King Louis XV in a French film is not about breaking box office records, it's about art. It's about stepping into history, about being part of a story told with elegance and intention. When that film premiered at Cannes, the standing ovation wasn't just about the performance, it was about the journey. It was about seeing Johnny Depp on that red carpet again, not as a tabloid headline, not as a courtroom figure, but as an actor, an artist, someone who still belongs in the world of cinema. The applause went on, and people cried, not because of the film alone, but because of the moment. Because Johnny had come back, not chasing the biggest spotlight, but finding a spotlight that fit him. His decision to focus on Dior campaigns is another example. Some might say, why a fragrance ad? But look closer. Dior wasn't just an endorsement deal, it was a partnership. It was about image, identity, and connection. Dior stuck by Johnny when much of Hollywood hesitated, and Johnny stood by. Dior giving them authenticity, giving them the face of someone who represents more than just luxury, someone who represents survival, resilience, and timeless appeal. That campaign became one of Dior's most successful ever, and in many ways, it was Johnny telling a story too, not with dialogue or costume, but with presence. With his face, his style, his very being, and then, of course, there's the music. Music was Johnny's first dream. Before Hollywood, before Jack Sparrow, before the fame, Johnny Depp was a kid with a guitar, chasing the dream of being a rock star. Acting came almost by accident. He once said he only took acting jobs to pay the bills, to support his music. And yet the acting career took off in a way nobody could have predicted. For years, music took a backseat. But now, in his 60s, he's circling back to where it all began. Touring with the Hollywood vampires, standing on stage next to legends, guitar in hand, pouring himself into the music. It's a full-circle moment. Fans who see him live say there's a different energy there. It's not the Johnny Depp of red carpets and Hollywood premieres. It's the Johnny Depp who never left music behind, who still loves the rawness of a guitar riff, the thrill of a live crowd. And maybe that's the purest version of him. Not the star, not the scandal, not the pirate, just the artist. But it's not just about what the public sees. Behind the scenes, Johnny has crafted a life that reflects that same philosophy. He spends time painting. His artworks have been showcased and sold, and people are often surprised at how talented he is. But it makes sense. Acting, painting, music, they're all forms of storytelling. And Johnny has always been a storyteller at heart. His art often reflects his experiences, his emotions, his view of the world. Each brushstroke is another way of saying, this is who I am. This is what I've lived. Those who know him say this balance, acting when he wants to, making music when he feels it, painting when the mood strikes, is what has kept him healthy, both physically and emotionally. At 62, he doesn't look like a man who's burned out by fame. He looks like someone who's finally found peace. Someone who has faced chaos and come out the other side with clarity. That clarity is powerful. It's why fans say Johnny is aging like fine wine. He's not fighting time. He's not desperately clinging to youth. He's embracing who he is, right now, in this moment. And that's rare in Hollywood, where so many stars seem terrified of growing older. Johnny is showing that you can age and still stay relevant, still stay magnetic, still stay true, and maybe that's why his story feels so inspiring. Because it's not just about him, it's about what he represents. He represents resilience. He represents the idea that you can lose almost everything. Your reputation, your career, your peace of mind, and still rebuild. He represents the truth that art, when it comes from the soul, can carry you through the darkest storms. Fans feel that. They see it in the way he plays his music. They see it in the calmness of his public appearances. They see it in the way he smiles now, softer, more genuine. And they see it in the way he chooses projects. He's not running after another billion-dollar payday. He's choosing roles and projects that matter to him. And because of that, they matter to us too. So when Johnny said, "I've never been interested in being the biggest star. I've always wanted to tell stories that matter," it wasn't just a nice quote for an interview. It was a philosophy. And at 62, he's proving it was real. He's not the biggest star right now, and he doesn't need to be. He's an artist, an actor, a musician, a painter, and a survivor. And that matters more. When you see Johnny Depp today, you don't just see an aging actor. You see a man who has lived through everything: fame, fortune, heartbreak, battles, victories, and still found a way to stand tall. You see someone who has chosen to tell stories that matter, not to Hollywood, but to himself. And that's why, even at 62, people can't stop watching him, because he's still telling stories. And because those stories, in whatever form they take, still matter to us too. So when people see him today and gasp, it's not just because of how he looks. It's because of what he represents. He's a reminder that you can survive the storms, that you can face down doubt, criticism, and controversy, and still come out stronger. He's proof that even when the world says you're finished, you can write your own ending. Johnny Depp at 62 isn't just an actor. He's an artist, a musician, a survivor, and an inspiration to fans who see themselves in his journey. He's not the same man he was at 30 or 40. He doesn't need to be. He's something different now, something deeper, calmer, and maybe even more powerful. And maybe that's why fans feel so connected to him still. Because he's real. Flawed, yes, human, absolutely, but real. So what do you think? Does it surprise you to see Johnny Depp thriving at 62? Do you think he should step back into Hollywood blockbusters or keep following his path with music, art, and independent films? It's a debate fans love to have, and there's no wrong answer. One thing's for sure. Johnny's story isn't over, not by a long shot. He's still out there, creating, performing, and connecting with fans. And if the past few years have taught us anything, it's this: never count Johnny Depp out. So, the next time you see him, whether it's on stage with his guitar in a painting he shared or walking another red carpet, remember this moment. Johnny Depp is 62, and he's still making people gasp. Not because he's changed too much, but because he's still unmistakably himself.